And welcome back, guys. In the last video, we covered some websites where we can get our texture files from. In this lesson, I'm going to show you and go through the process of hooking all those texture files up so that we can make our final material and network shader within Maya. So this is going to be a fun one. As I mentioned before, let me just move you on this over. You'll find the texture files within the section 7 folder in source images, and then you'll find, of course, the gold sail that I was referring to, as well as the mossy rock file that we downloaded in the previous lesson. So as I said in the previous lesson, we're going to be building this gold space sail material up so that we can get something looking cool. I'm going to move this off screen because I don't need to see it at this point. So as you guys know, when you are starting a project or even continuing a project, remember to set your project up. So remember to go to File, Set Project, and select the correct project, else your source images won't pop up when we actually select a file node operation within the hypershade. So for the sail thing, I imagine the sail being like a sail. Like so, I would like to start off using just a plane, and then I know based off the website that this sail covers a 34 centimeter area. So I'm just going to go change the width and height. So 34.7 by 34.7. So now we've got the size that we need. I'm just going to move that on up. Now I also need a default light source that lights the scene evenly from everywhere. So I'm going to go up into Arnold, and I'm going to go lights, and I'm going to use the sky dome light. As you can see, it makes a very big sphere that encompasses the entire scene. So now that this sphere is around our scene, I just want to make one thing so it's going to make our lives easier going down the line. I want to put this sky dome light on a layer and then basically lock the layer so that I don't by accident keep selecting it when I do like marquee selections and stuff. I'm just going to select it, click that little paper guy here with a little sphere on it, which will create a layer and put the object that I currently have selected into that layer. I'm going to do that, and I'm going to go change it to a reference, and now I should not be able to select it. Remember, guys, we always go and rename. So sky dome underscore L. Save. That's great. We can even give it its own color if we want to, so it's yellow. Now let's go open up our hypershade, which is the little sphere guy right here. My hypershade just opened up on a different monitor, so let me just drag it in. All of you should be familiar with this guy when we built our presets. I'm just going to go reset some of the window options here. Okay, so I just brought back my create option here where I can select the different materials and shader options that we have here. But we don't really need this. I would prefer having a larger work area in here. So let's go do some shifting around of windows so we have a bigger work area for our shader network. So the first thing I want to do, I want to close this guy down because we're not going to need it at this point. And then I want to pull this window out now. Come along, that guy in there. You, the property guy, can go in there. And last but not least, this guy can go in there. So I can see my materials. We're not going to really need the material viewer, so I'm going to close that down. So now we've got a decently laid out hypershade view where we can create stuff a lot easier because there's a lot more working space. And also the reason I took away the option where we could select materials and utilities and all that kinds of stuff is because there is a shortcut key that you could use inside the Create tab to search for specific things. So now that we have everything the way we'd like it, I'm just going to highlight the work area and press tab on my keyboard, and as you can see, a little search window pops up. So I would like the AI standard surface shader, and as I do that, click on it, you can see it just creates it for me. Now I want to apply this material to my little plane guy, so I'm just going to select it, right click, assign to selection, and then I also do not need and use my attribute editor, I guess, and then I just want to change the weight of the color to a full 1, so it's this light gray color, and you'll see it updates in there as well. Now with that done, let's go and just want to put this guy here. I want to get closer to this plane. And if I do a test render by clicking the little clapper here, you can see there's nothing, or it seems like there's nothing in there because the plane is white itself. So if I just go and say maybe change the color to like a off gray or light gray, re-render, you can see there's the plane and this white void. Let me just close that guy down. I'm going to go put the color back to a 1. Now let's start playing here. So I'm going to maximize this window so we only see this. So we're going to start by creating the gold sail. So I'm going to have this window off to the side of my monitor. I'm going to be dropping and dragging in these texture files as we need them. So the first thing we do is we give our shader a name. So this one we can go and call this gold space sail, and then the word matte, so we know it's a material, and then also the AI standard surface shader output, the last thing. So we can go and just copy this name, copy, and then we can go paste and remove the matte and just gold surface sail or gold space sail. So now our things are nicely labeled and we know where we are on light. So I'm going to first drag in the albedo, which is just the default colors with no like shading or anything, the flat colors. I have my material viewer open and I select that guy. You can see it changes to whatever files in there, and as you can see, it's just flat colors. Close this window up again. So we got that guy in here. Now I would like its color to go into the color of my material. You keep hover over that long enough, it kind of expands it. I'm putting my out into base color. So if I go in here and turn on me textures, you'll see the plane is updated. Let's maximize that again. Now again, just go and rename everything. These names are insane. So we can go space blanket. I know it's 4K, so I don't need to do that. And I can just call it albedo. There's only going to be one of them in my scene. So do that and underscore file. Then I'm going to turn off quadratic for filter type because I've made my plane the size that I wanted. I know the texture is going to fit on it nicely. Now, the filter here is basically Maya going in and blurring some of the crisp edges to make up for textures that might be smaller in resolution. But I want to work at the resolution I have, so I'm just going to turn that guy off. So with that now all done, again, I can go in here and take this name. See, this thing is called textures, and make this, copy that, and place it onto this, and just go rename that to place 2D, so that I know that this one is telling this file where to be on the UV map. The next file I want to drop and drag in here is the ambient occlusion. Now, if you guys can recall, ambient occlusion is Maya or any 3D software actually. It's a texture type that bakes in false shadows. And what I mean by that is it generates shadows depending on distance between the meshes at render time. Rather than having Maya calculate the ambient occlusion every time you render, you can bake out an occlusion map and then plug it into the texture and then plug it into the material. It saves render time. I'm going to grab this guy again. I am going to go, I can potentially grab that albedo. Let's go and remove all of this nonsense. Yeah, so we have a name that we can use. There's only one of them in my scene and I know it's 4K, so the name doesn't need that. AO, and then I can go underscore file. I'm going to copy that so that I can put it onto this guy, and then place the name file, replace the word file with place, not 3D but 2D. This guy still has that textures thing. Where is it getting that textures icon plastic from? Yeah, now the problem we're facing here is both of these file nodes or texture maps need to go into base color. If you're familiar with Photoshop, to get something like a black and white image to go over a color image and darken the color image underneath it, you will use the multiply option within Photoshop so that the black and white gets multiplied over the color image. And what happens is the black areas or the dark areas in the texture file, because if I go open up the ambient occlusion, you see it's a black and white image. So where there's darkness, it will create the shadow, and where it's bright, it will not create a shadow. Basically, here it's going to add color. By the whitest parts, it's not going to add any color, and these gray parts, it will add a bit of shadow as well. So we need to multiply these two guys together. So I'm just going to go and delete this connection here, and I want to create a multiply node. So again, tab, and I'm going to go just type in multiply, and as you can see, there's an AI multiply node. Now I would like color to go into input 1, and this guy's color going to input 2, and then Maya does the multiply on it. As you can see, it did it already here. If I remove the top one, you'll see that guy is not producing anything because it needs 2 inputs. As soon as I do that, it understands what's happening, and now you can already see there is some shadows on the albedo. And from this, we're going to take the final out color and plug it into our base. Then I'm going to select all of these bad boys and then just move it like nice out of the way. Again, if we go look at what's happening in Maya, you can see the ambient occlusion has been added. So let's go play in here. I'm going to hold down Alt so I can like just dolly around or move around in here. I'm just working myself down image list here. So next one I'm going to add is the height map. Move that out. I'm going to go add this guy in here. So now that we have the ambient occlusion as well as the albedo plugged in, I want to go and have one of the texture files that we have, that is the height map. We can use that to actually deform the topology on our mesh. So the way we get that to work is we go click on the final output, and as you can see, there's our displacement. I'm going to go in there. I'm going to go inside of my property editor, and you see displacement map. I'm going to click on the little checkerboard, and I want to plug in a file. Now, as you can see, Maya's gone ahead and created like the entire shader network required to plug in a file node for our displacement. I just want to move these guys around because I just like having the lines not cross over. So I'm going to go back to file here, and as you can see, this image name, I'm going to click the little folder icon. It will open up in the source images folder for the last project that you've set. We're going to be going into section 7, and there are gold sale, and then we will have one called height, which is there. Click open, and as you see, it's a TIFF file, so it's an image file. Click open, and again, I don't want any filtering to happen, so I'm going to turn that off. And another thing that we need to change on this specific file is the color space it's in. So we want to use the raw data, so raw black and white. So sRGB is normally things for JPEGs or PNGs. So if you have a file type like a TIFF that's normally saved at a 16-bit or higher data value, you need to change it to raw so that Maya can get the raw color information from that file. Now again, we can go in here and then replace these names. So we can go and grab this name in here and go in here. We can go change this guy. Let's go put it on the front. I'm going to go and paste. It's not an AO, but it's a displacement, and there's only going to be one of them. Then I'm going to go grab that name, put it into that name. This should not be displacement shader. Also not 01, but this is file node. And then last but not least, we can go to the thing in here, delete all that, go to the front, paste, press spacebar, and boom. Always go and rename your nodes, guys, because if someone else needed to go and work on your shader network and you're not available, they would need to know what is going on. And a good naming convention makes you stand out from the other guys, and people will be thankful for that. I just want to collapse this normal camera down. For some reason it's been uncollapsed. Now we've got a displacement map plugged in. We've got our color and ambient occlusion things plugged in. So now we can go and play here, do this, and we can go change the scale, meaning the intensity. So we can go maybe 1.5 because I want to kind of blow it out so that you can see what's currently happening. Let's go get this guy painted up nicely. Click the little clapper. And as you can see, Maya is starting to lift geometry up and down, but not as much as I would like to. So we need to tell Maya that when it comes to render time, it needs to subdivide this piece of geometry based on the displacement information it has. With the geometry selected inside the attribute editor, by default, it should be in the tab for mesh. And then in here, we're going to go to the Arnold rollout, and we're going to go scroll down. And as you can see, we got subdivision. resolution. We're going to change that from none to cat clock. And then you can go up the iterations. Iterations mean by how many times it should subdivide the mesh. For testing purposes, let's put it up to 2 and do a new render. And now as you can see, our mesh is being lifted a lot more and it's actually being subdivided to get the resolution needed. I can actually close this guy down. If I really want, I can go to Arnold and open up render view, which now is on my other monitor. So, and then click the little play button, move this guy out of off the screen, and it updates as I move around in my viewport. And as you guys can see, it's lifting and pressing down on the actual geometry. Now, again, if we go and bump up how intense it is, as you can see, it's currently at 0.5. If we go to 3 and do it, of course, it's going to shove the mesh a lot more, and then we're going to need to subdivide it more so that it can keep up with that. So if we go to subdivide it by 4, you can see it creates nice and smoother hills and plateaus and all that kinds of stuff. But I don't want it to push it that far, so I'm going to keep it at 2, and then also I'm going to drop the intensity of my displacement down from 3 to a 1 scale. As you can see, it's doing a slight deformation, which is what I like. Let's go stop the rendering here because it will slow down the entire process. Let's go maximize this guy. So the next texture file that I would like to plug in here is the normal map. So I'm going to go boom, drop that in here. Now the normal map is special texture file. So if I open it up, you can see it's this weird bluish map. The great thing about this is it looks like the texture is actually has the wrinkles and stuff. It feels as if it's wrinkled and have the like lines. We can add this as additional detail on our models just by using a plugged in map. Normally, the normal map is generated from a sculpting program like Mudbox that you can sculpt this kind of detail and export the sculpted information as a normal map and then plug it in as a texture file, which then saves on render time. Now again, I'm going to go in here, dropped in this normal map. Again, I do not want it to filter at all. And this file type, I would like the raw information that's in there. I don't want any color corrections or anything happening on this texture file. And then from this guy, we're going to go and say out color into camera normal. Now let's go try another render. Okay, rendering now. Now you should be able to see that there's now a little panel line in here, which is coming from the normal map. You can go push the values up or down to either exaggerate or tone down what's currently happening. Then I would like to use my displacement map to add more information into our little normal map information. So what we can do is we can go and grab the height map and drop it in here, which is great. I'm going to go disconnect the normal map from normal camera. Okay, so with those disconnected now, I would like to go and add 2 different additional nodes, which is basically, I would like to go and add a 2D bump node to each one of these. So again, I'm just going to go tab and press bump, and then I can copy and put 2D there. I can go and copy, and so with the 2D in there, we can go tab and then go to 2D bump. Now again, the normal map, I would like alpha in there, but this bump, I need to make sure it's not used as bump, but tangent space normals because of the bluish nature of that. And then this guy into bump. Here is, I'm going to take this bump of the height map and plug it into normal camera. And then I would like to connect this bump into that bump node. And the way we do that is through a window called the connection editor. So we can go to window and there we'll find connection editor. So I would like to select the normal map guy and I would like it to be loaded on the left of this window, and then our official black and white height map, also I would like it to be loaded in the right side, because now whatever I select here and select here, Maya will do a connection. So I would like the normal out to be connected to the camera normal here, and then I can click close, and then you'll see Maya does that little connection chain for us. So we're just adding more information to these things, which is great because now all of that goes into here. And if I go and let's go do a render, you'll see there's a lot more little details that's popping now, which is great. And that's what we would like to see. Now we have 2 more materials to connect up to this shaded network, and then we are going to be done with this guy. And as you can see, it becomes quite complex relatively quickly. That's why naming your nodes and all that kinds of stuff and naming materials is such an important aspect of creating materials in shader network. So I would like to add the metallic channel. And as you know, this is just metallic, and the Arnold standard surface shader has the metallic options. I would like the alpha to go into metalness. And then last but not least, we want the roughness, which is basically the specular map. Let me just undo that. Move this guy up, move this guy so that I have some sensibility of what's going on here. So I want to use the roughness map to determine what is shiny and not shiny on this guy. I'm going to go here. This is a black and white map. I would like it to go into specular. Then the color, I would like to go into specular color. And then of course the roughness, I would also want to get the specular roughness. So this guy makes 3 connections into our final node. If I go, just move this guy off screen, and let's go and make our viewport a renderable viewport. Now, with all this file nodes and everything plugged in, we have the mesh and the texture looking like it's supposed to, but as you can see, it's not as shiny as a gold sheet is supposed to look like. The file node we're using to create its shininess or specularity, we just need to go check one more guy in here. Again, this guy needs to be raw because it's a black and white file node. And then we want to go and change alpha is luminance. As soon as we do that, and it just move this guy off to the side, you can see we have a very gold surface with cool deformations and all that great stuff without needing to model in all these folds. So the cool thing is, if you go model things like panels and stuff, or just block out the sheets like on a spaceship, you can apply this network to it and your mesh would deform and subdivided render time to look kind of good. So with this geometry selected, let's go pump up its iterations to like 2 to get a smoother render here, so the mesh deforms a lot better. So let's go just up the amount of times it can subdivide. We can potentially take it to like 4. Let's see if that makes any sense. That creates nice, very wavy, but I don't want that too wavy. So I want a little bit of sharpness in there, which is nice. Now we get something looking quite great. Now the great thing about this, we've built the shader network now. I can bring in a sphere, bring the sphere up. I can go scale this sphere. And then of course I can go grab my hypershade. I can either now right click and assign to selection, or I can middle mouse click and drag it onto my sphere. And as you see, it applies that gold on it, or that gold sheet on it. And as you can see, it actually deforms the sphere quite nicely. And as you can see, it hasn't like changed my topology in any way that makes any difference to me. It's still the way it was modeled. Now the great thing is you can see the materials react to one another. You can see the reflection of this guy in there, and if I start putting them closer, you can see how cool that stuff starts to look. So again, we can take this piece of geometry now, we can go to its subdivision, and we're going to go cat clock, and we can set it up to 2. But now we can see here the height maps and stuff is pushing it a bit high. Let's see if auto bump map will help out there. No. So just to help us out now, I'm going to go in here. And then of course our displacement, we can go change the scale to like 0.03. And as you can see, it's starting to subdue the amount of distortion it's creating on that sphere. We can also go into the bump here and then bump depth 0.3, and then of course the normal tangent space 0.3, maybe 0.02, last but not least 0.02, and there we've kind of like just dulled down the deformation. This works on a sphere, but it's not deforming on the plane as much anymore. So maybe let's go 0.1 or 0.2. Now you need to find a nice in-between value. So if I really want to have the sphere deform one way and the plane deform another, I can duplicate the shader network and go tweak the settings so it works properly for a sphere and leave the other one the way it was for the plane. So the way we do that is select our shader network. We can go to edit, and when we go to duplicate shading network, and as you can see now there's a lot of them. I just want this one guy, so I just want to show its input output connections, and then we can use this guy for the sphere option. Now the cool thing is, if we go and remove this all cumbersome light, turn off its visibility, and let's try and do a render, everything should be black. Great. Let's go add in like a normal light, which is a area light within Maya for Arnold. Make this light pretty big, then have this guy point a bit down. Let's start the render process. As you can see, it's not very bright. So let's go and play with its exposure and push it up to like 10. As you can see, it creates very realistic looking gold. The Skydome light we use is just to set it up and do testing with, but then the final result we will be using like Arnold lights and Maya lights to get the final effect. So I'm gonna go maybe 11, and as you can see, it creates a very bright spot. Maybe let's go and move this guy a little bit more back so it's not that bright. Even do this, move it over everything. Let's go and move it up. We can also make it a bit bigger to encompass the entire area. And there we go. We got our space sail set up. I'm sure all of you are finding this pretty cool, because I still find this amazing how you can replicate reality in CG. It'll never grow old in my eyes. Just look at that. That is so cool. Now, if I want to do a final render, I can put the thing here. Let's stop this render. Click on the little clapper with the gear. And for rendering purposes, we can go put all of these guys up to like a 3. So we're taking all the properties to a higher quality, and then we click render, and this should take not a lot of time, but also depending on your machine. And now you can see what it looks like as a final render. Cool little creases and stuff from the normal map and bump maps. It just looks very cool. So I'm going to leave this lesson off here, and in the next lesson we're going to be building the mossy rock shader network as like the final example. I want to show you how similar the steps are. You tend to follow the same sequence of connecting the things up and putting them in the same like slots and all that kind of good stuff. I shall catch you in the next lesson.